I am Ricardo Barrett Hernandez, and I am the chief of the Santa Rosa First Peoples community, which is located here in Arima, Trinidad. The Santa Rosa First Peoples community was previously called the Santa Rosa Carib community. Carib is one of the nations that lived here in the island. And of course, this is the colonizer's name, Carib, but they would have been Cariña, which is that nation of the indigenous peoples. But the community here in Arima was established first in the 1750s by the missionaries, Catholic missionaries from Spain. When the mission was established in Arima, it was short-lived. It lasted just about 30 years, and because they had two major problems. They had the problems of the Indians of the area, as they were called, that is the First Peoples, who retaliated strongly, and then they had financial problems. So the missionaries abandoned the mission for about 30 years, and it was not until 1785 or 86 thereabout that a second attempt was made to re-establish the mission of Santa Rosa here in Arima. And that time, the second time around, it was successful. The Amerindians from three former encomiendas of the Spanish occupation, namely Tacarigua, Cora, and Arauca, which we call Aruca today, they were relocated to this place that we call Arima, and these were the Amerindians who started this mission of Santa Rosa. Of course, under the guidance of the Catholic Church, this mission was established for them. At that time was the cedula of population, and the authorities at the time wanted to open up Trinidad to newcomers so that they can develop Trinidad through the agriculture and whatever else they could have engaged them in. So they took the lands that the First Peoples had already cultivated with cocoa and coffee and citrus and so on in the encomiendas and gave it to the newcomers. And they took the First Peoples and they brought them to this land, this space here in Arima, to start afresh to develop it for themselves. And that is how the mission was born. And of course, the name Santa Rosa is Spanish, and the saint is Catholic. So the mission was dedicated to the first saint of the New World, Santa Rosa. And it carried that name until present day. Of course, in those early days, there were only Amerindians living in the mission. But as time went on, and the Spanish gave up Trinidad to the British, things started to change. They brought new families to Arima, and of course, when you do that, mixing start. So the original inhabitants started to mix their bloodline with the Spanish and mostly the Venezuelans that came across from Venezuela, who were themselves partly indigenous. And then they mixed with other ethnicities that would have come into Arima. But the community today is a mixed community, but there are a significant number of people who still identify with their indigenous past, and the traditions of the First Peoples that they have held on to, we still practice it. The Santa Rosa Festival, as I said, was for many years the only vehicle through which the First Peoples and their descendants had a platform to showcase the indigenous side, what is indigenous of them. And they would do that through their celebration of that feast of Santa Rosa. After the Catholic formalities, the Indians, as they were referred to, held their own functions, their own feasting, their own drumming, their own dancing, their own games. They prepared their own indigenous foods, they played their own games, and so on. They kept a festival. So that was the medium through which they were able to retain aspects of the original tradition of the First Peoples.